morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the third installment of our monthly Plus16 webinar series. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We know that you're busy, so our goal is to be focused and to pack a meaningful data session into an efficient 30-minute window. As usual, I will ask you to drop any questions you have into the chat as we go through the presentation, and we'll save time for Q&A at the end. We will be recording this session and sending a link afterwards. So let's get started. My name is Kathy Dew. I'm the CEO and Information Architect for 2Plus2. I've also got Sally Dew, our Creative Director here. Today we're talking about refreshing your website.
So let's start with a few definitions. What do we really mean when we say refresh or upgrade or redesign? Well, a website redesign involves overhauling all or nearly all of the code as well as the look and feel of the website. This effort is big and more comprehensive than a refresh project. It might even involve complete replacement of an outdated CMS system or the integration of advanced marketing features or other third-party tools. A redesign is not what we're talking about today. An upgrade is a more technical project and refers specifically to the process of replacing hardware, software, or firmware with a newer version. This is done to keep technology current and to improve performance. While an upgrade may coincide with a redesign or a refresh project, it is not always the case. An upgrade is also not what we're talking about here today. So what we are talking about today is a refresh project. A website refresh involves modifying outdated elements while leaving others intact. Typically, a refresh involves reskinning a website to give it a new look and feel. Also, a refresh project can include adding or updating structural elements of your system. Think of this as infrastructure. A refresh can be implemented in specific areas of a website, or it can be a site-wide effort. In all cases, a refresh breathes new life into your current website and acts to bridge the interim between full redesign efforts. So why refresh your enterprise CMS website? The number one reason to refresh is to make your site responsive or more responsive. Responsive web design, or RWD, involves crafting your site to provide an optimal visitor experience across a wide range of devices, from desktop to tablet to smartphone. If your website is not responsive, then your site is definitely an excellent candidate for a refresh. Simply put, mobile-friendly websites are mandatory in today's business world. Half of the world's population now has a mobile phone. By 2020, that number is estimated to be 60%. 10 years ago, it was just 1 person in 5. The second reason for a refresh is if your site is visually dated. Immediate graphic cues signal the visitor that a website is old and in need of a refresh. One of the most obvious signs is narrow page widths, where content and graphics don't take advantage of the full width of the browser window. Another obvious sign of an outdated website are small images that are bound by the content and unable to break free of the layout and resize to full width. Dense blocks of text with small point sizes are another indicator that a website is outdated. Just by refreshing the visuals to take full advantage of the luxurious space afforded to modern-day websites, you can bring your company brand to current times. The third reason for a refresh is if your messaging is off target. Remember, a refresh project provides a great opportunity to review your content and messaging to be sure you're speaking directly to your target customers and prospects. If your content is lacking, consider developing personas for each of your primary target audiences. Make sure your brand voice is consistent with your look and feel, and use language your audience understands. Speak to your audience's pain points and how you can help them. Be sure you're using clear calls to action and track your metrics to learn what works best. Trends change quickly, and it is critical to keep messaging and calls to action clear and relevant at all times.
So by now, I hope we've convinced you that refreshing your website is well worth it. with relatively minor effort, your UI framework can be refreshed to support a new user experience without the investment of a full-on redesign effort. The goal of the refresh is to establish a framework of premier UI templates, widgets, and controls that is flexible, extensible, and maintains the integrity of your brand across all platforms. I know that sounds great, so how are we going to do it? Step number 1, clarify and agree on scope. First, you're going to want to ask key stakeholders what's working and what's not on your current enterprise CMS website. In the spirit of a refresh, you will want to do this efficiently. For public websites, sales and marketing has probably already got a running list of improvements they'd like to see. Start with this and build a short survey to send to other employees and select customers, especially if you have a collaborative relationship with a few of them. For internal intranets, you can easily post a predefined list of possible features and enhancements and content challenges, and then have a fill-in-the-blank option to gather their input. Whether your audience is internal or external, talk to your content providers and editors. They will definitely have ideas on what's limiting or is a challenge with respect to your current site. Once you've collected all the input, finalize and prioritize all refresh tasks with the project team. This will drive the direction of the project and give you a mechanism for keeping the project on track. It is very easy for things to expand into a complete redesign, which of course misses the entire point of a refresh. Step 2, analyze your framework. Review all your templates for overall page layout. Focus on the header and footer, the max width, the grid system. Pay special attention to mobile. Ensure that things like clickable targets are at least 40 by 40 pixels. There's been a lot of recent studies that say that a lot of the mobile sites just aren't really optimized for mobile. This is a great opportunity. Take a look at your navigation and rework as needed. Certain items may have increased in importance and should be highlighted. This is an opportunity to really change the labels of your sections. Just be sure it makes sense and won't confuse your audience. Also remember, if you change the page name, that might actually change the file name. And if you do, you need to be sure to add a redirect to the new page name so that you don't end up with a lot of 404 errors on your website. You're going to want to review containers and styles and look for opportunities to update existing ones as well as add new ones. This is one of the biggest areas for changing the experience of your site. Finally, if you don't already have it, you might want to consider implementing an HTML, CMS, CSS, JavaScript framework. The most popular one of these by far is Bootstrap. Bootstrap saves time. It makes front-end web development faster and easier. It has a great grid system, and it really helps ensure consistency and sets your site up to deliver a great UX experience from desktop to mobile. Bootstrap is open source, and there are more than 7 million websites using it. I should note there are other frameworks. Foundation is probably the next most popular one. It doesn't matter which one you use. The point is to leverage a tool that can really help you create an optimized user experience. Number 3, review your content. Analyze your content. Any refresh project is a great opportunity to review and refine your messaging. Shed any stale, unused content, and put energy into new content. One of the most important messages on your site are really your calls to action, or CTAs, as we call them in the SEO lingo. Some examples are sign up or subscribe, register or log in, get started to walk through a flow to understand the process of an engagement. Maybe you have see a demo, which is a teaser of your product or service. There might be something to download for free. You might have a contact us or a talk to an expert, or even your search. All these are calls to action, or really the opportunities to engage your audience. So you're going to want to make sure you really look at those and that they speak to your audience.
Okay, step 4 is explore the look and feel. You want to approach the refresh project component by component so you can understand the impact of visual changes you're making across the site. The notion here is to think of your design as a system. Atomic design is a methodology made famous by a guy named Brad Frost and includes 5 stages working together to create an interface design system. You have atoms, which are basic tags like form labels, inputs, and buttons. Molecules are simple groups of UI elements functioning together as a unit. For example, you might have a form label, a search input, and a button combined to create a search form molecule. Organisms are more complex UI components. They form distinct elements of an interface, for example, a header element. Templates are page-level objects that place components into a layout. So for example, we take the header organism and apply it to the home page template. And then finally, pages are specific instances of templates used throughout your site. And one of the biggest opportunities to rework is the header and footer elements. So don't forget to review your options for visual changes and get approval before committing to the HTML and CSS changes. Step 5 is to review and finalize the plan. There will be revisions and you will need to get approvals. Make sure you include the decision makers in at every level of the refresh project so when the time comes to go live, everyone is on board and invested. Again, I can't stress enough how important it is to involve the editors and content creators of your site. Involving them in the design process not only results in a better thought out design, but it also helps them get on board and even get trained on the new framework before launch. Step 6 is to develop an implementation strategy. Depending on how the existing site was built, you may need to do more or less UI development work to realize your vision. UI coding standards change frequently, and a website that has not been updated to current industry will lag. If your site is primarily a content site, then you may be able to build the new site in a stage or test environment and then move it all at once to production. If your site is very active in terms of database features, for example, people signing up or making orders, then you will need to coordinate the implementation differently. In this case, you may need to do some clever renaming of files to pull off a smooth go live. Now we want to move on to talk about an in-progress refresh project with one of our clients. The Dairy Council of California is all about nutrition education in the schools. So let's look at a couple of examples of what we did with the healthyeating.org website. The first image you will see is the existing element, and then the second image will be the redesigned element. So in this case, the header element represents one of your biggest opportunities for impact. This is an element that's at the top of every page. So in DCC's case, we reworked the header for the wider max width, we went to 1366. We moved the social icons out of the header to air things out. We increased the point size for the navigation menu to be more readable. We increased the logo size to give the Dairy Council more presence. And we gave more presence to the food block branding element over on the right. Finally, we grouped functional items, the login, order, and search, together in an organism inside the header. The next content area we tackled was the top content main slider area. This is the existing, and you can see there's 3 areas of messaging there that you need to take in. The new design re-envisioned this content. We pulled out and styled an announcement content type for when DCC has big releases to make. In this instance, it's the new dietary guidelines. During times when there is no announcement, this element collapses and the real estate is reclaimed. Next, we redesigned the slider for better usability. By seeing the edges of the next and previous slider images, this quickly communicates to the visitor that more content is available. Also, the wider max width allows for larger headlines and bigger images. The next element is a feature box, and this is the existing element, and this is how we reimagined it. The tile, also called card design, is more appealing than a bulleted list. By adding images, we've added life to this element, and the items are clearly clickable. There's lots of information choices here without appearing overwhelming or confusing to the audience. Next, we tackled some content layout modules. In this case, they just had this one module that they reused over and over again. And we re-envisioned for variety in page layouts. So we added a 2-column format for related information. In this case, school curriculum and school wellness go together. The variety breaks up the monotony of using the same container over and over again. And in this case, by juxtaposing images and copy, that is avoiding side-by-side headers, you can display dense content in a visually appealing way. This is another container that we reimagined to be more engaging for the audience. So by using full-width color banners, we can highlight important information. Again, we use large images for interest, and we have very clear calls to action. Here's another container with a numbered list, and we reimagined that into something, again, more compelling. So it's another example of a tile or card design, again, more appealing than a bulleted list. In this case, if images aren't available, you can consider using solid colors and graphic numbers to make things more engaging. Again, items are clearly clickable, and you have lots of information choices without overwhelming your audience. Finally, we looked at the footer. Again, we reworked it for the wider max width, and we featured this social icon bar directly above the footer. Finally, we cleaned up just some clutter to make it more streamlined.
So let's put it all together and take a look. So what we're looking at now is actually, I will say that this project is in progress. They have not gone live yet. At this moment, Dairy Council is busy implementing this site throughout their entire site. So we developed a series of new widgets, new CSS, again, the new grid system, and say they're busy now taking that and applying it throughout their website. But this will be the new homepage. And I'm really just going to kind of scroll through. We've looked at many of these elements separately to look at the before and after, but now you can kind of see how it plays out as really an integrated experience. So I'm, again, just going to scroll through, let you take a look, because you can also see how breaking up full color across the white zones just continues to add interest. So when you're ready for a refresh, it's easy for your project to creep out of scope, way out of scope. So this is probably one of your biggest challenges. You'll probably have more ideas than you can implement in the time frame and the budget of a refresh. But remember, the whole premise of the refresh is that you can strategically implement a small number of changes to the framework and to the visual implementation of that framework that will greatly enhance the user experience of your web property. So here are a few points to keep in mind. One, keep track of all the things you want to do, but prioritize what's critical for launch. Number two, target the most important pages from either a communication perspective or from a traffic perspective. You're going to want to look at your web stats as you go into this and find out where people are going so you can have the most impact. Third, and probably the most important, is really focus on the design system to establish your content tool set moving forward. And really, the thing we want to leave you with is commit to keeping your site refreshed. Once you have the mechanics completed, the actual generation of new content using the amazing new widgets and the gorgeous containers you've developed can be done in an ongoing, continuous improvement manner. This really sets you up for future changes that will be easy to implement. So that concludes what we wanted to talk about today. So our question for you is it time for a refresh? Now let's see if you have some questions for us. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here's one. We can't afford to do the whole site. Is it worth doing anything? Okay, I guess I'm going to answer that with the caveat that as long as you have enough budget to really look at your framework, I would say that the framework is probably the most important component. So if you can really address the framework piece, and by that I mean your grid system and your series of containers that are going to be used throughout it, then I would say it's totally worth it. You can just pick a couple of pages like your home page and maybe a couple of section pages, main section pages, as your kickoff implementation. But again, as we've said, once you have that system in place, you can over time implement that throughout your website. So even if you can't afford to do the whole thing, I think it's totally, totally worth it. Okay, here's a second question. This one says, our desktop site is pretty nice, but our mobile is not so good, not mobile friendly, in fact, is what it says. And the question is, does that work as a refresh project? So, okay, so, you know, again, I'm going to say absolutely. One of the things that we've learned as we've worked with clients is that rather than just take everything from the desktop and put it onto the mobile, you probably can go area by area, feature by feature, content chunk by content chunk, and decide if that's really relevant as a mobile experience. And so I would say that having your refresh be around mobile is a perfectly reasonable way to go. I will say that having the structure in place, the mechanism in place, the grid system will make that implementation easier. So kind of building on the previous question, if you have that system in place, then yes, addressing mobile is going to be easier. So, but whether you come at your new grid system, your new design system from mobile first or from desktop first, it probably doesn't really matter as long as you get there. You just want to get there. Okay, I think, are there any more questions? I'm just going to check in with our colleague. And it looks like we're done. So I want to thank you very much. As always, we will be having our next webinar will be the 5th of July, which is a Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. So we will see you next Tuesday, July 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you very much.